What's up, bro? You there? Now he's freezing again. Can you hear me, Skip?
Yeah, I hear you.
All right. We live. No fuss, no muss. I just turn this. All right, I went to tech support and they walked me through it. All my fault. Janky as hell. I can't even see. Glasses off. Man, pollen. Oh, damn it. Damn it. All right, man. I'd love to say I'm a victim of some vast conspiracy, but I'm not.
The feds was watching, man. They knew I was back tonight.
I'd like to say that.
They knew what was up, man. They saw us, man.
I don't know. I think that's a bit. They too busy with Brother Polite to be looking at Brother Polite hogging the spotlight. The feds. You know, once they get him settled into his new accommodations, they might come back to watching us. But right now, I think we could all act pretty freely. But, you know, I am malcontent. But anyway, you've been missed. I've been trying to explain away your absence. I've been telling people about this hip hop lifestyle that you live.
I do not, bro.
This MC artist lifestyle you live.
I do not do any of those things. I know the audience and you understand, but man, little kid soccer, man. You know.
Oh, come on. Okay. Blame your family. You like what's that? You like Ted Cruz when he skipped out on Texas during a natural disaster and he blamed it on his daughter. He's like, my daughter really wanted to go to the Caribbean. And, I would have been here fighting for my constituents, but my child really needed me. So you gonna bust a Ted Cruz on us.
Nah, man, I coach my little boy. I coach the baby boy. I coach all.
Stop! I'm not gonna be privy to you blaming the babies.
No, man, I coach August,
for your failure to meet your commitments.
And I got a class on Thursdays. So yeah, man, I'm happy to be back though, man. I had a rough day today, but this was something.
Oh, what's going on? You need to talk.
No, I just say this, man. It is real easy to talk about how hard life is, but bro, I went to court today, and man, these folks don't care nothing about us, man. And we know that. We know that, but like when you looking at a person that you one time loved that would have laid your life down for easily, just fighting in the court, it's crazy. Like it's really surreal to look at a person that you thought you knew and to have no, like, to not even recognize that person anymore. Like it's a wild thing. and
I can imagine.
My children suffer because of it. You know what I'm saying? So, but we're gonna go back. We're gonna do it again. We're gonna win next time.
Whew. I'll just leave it at that, man. I'm sorry. I'm here. You need anything, bro? I'm always here. But beyond that,
I believe that. Yeah, like the reality is, man, like the way I've been loved and supported, after, today, like it still feels good and it still feels terrible to be here. But,
right.
At least not tonight. We shouldn't have to argue too much. It'll be a lot of laughing because I don't think I can take a position that is contrary to where you going with this. So, like that's good.
Well, my heart is, I'm upset because I worked really hard on this thumbnail on the image for the video, and I couldn't use it because I had to make a whole new video.
Oh wow!
But I'm gonna share it. I switch screens, man. But I worked really hard on this, and I feel like I worked hard on this, and I wanted to explain why I did this.
Okay.
Let me see. I think it's here. Yeah. See, this was supposed to be the screen for today's discussion. You feel me? So that's what I was going. I should just make that the background. Okay, let me go see if I can switch that while we talking. See, here I am playing games. Cause I let me tell you something. I was gonna put another figure on here.
Okay.
There was somebody else I wanted to put on here, and I went against it because I thought it was a bit too obscure. I'm gonna do that. Stop screen sharing. Let me take that off. And I put Ice Cube instead, but I originally wanted to put this dude on for the thing. Let me see. Oh, here's it. I wanted to put this cat, William Hannibal Thomas.
Okay.
That's a nice picture.
Okay.
I was gonna put him on the Black Conservatism and Black Judas's thumbnail for our broadcast this evening, but I thought, don't nobody know who that is. Yeah. So then I asked myself, who is a modern equivalent of this individual?
Okay.
Even though he's been lost to history, this is one of the most impactful Black men.
Okay.
This man is on the level of Booker T. Washington. He's on the level of W.E.B. Du Bois. He's on the level and was even a contemporary with Frederick Douglass. And I would say this Black man right here has had more of a residual impact on the psyche and the conditions of African people than Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois combined.
Okay, you got.
And don't nobody know who this Negro is.
Yeah.
Don't nobody know who this Negro is. And so, but I figured if I put him on the thumbnail, wouldn't nobody click on it?
Okay.
So I put Ice Cube on there because I feel that Ice Cube is, to a lesser degree, a modern day manifestation of this individual. And he's somebody that's a household name. Now, I was going to put Larry Elder on there, but I figured, since Larry Elder shaved his mustache, I can't stand to look at the motherfucker. So for my own personal reasons, I couldn't use an image of Larry Elder. And then it's just so many Black people. I was going to put Clarence Thomas on there, but I figured that was too easy. That was too easy. And I figured if somebody looked at that and be like, oh, they talking about Black conservatism and Black Judases, and I put Clarence Thomas on there, people be like, I already know. Then I was going to put Barack Hussein Obama on there, but I got to live here. I live in Chicago. I got to live here. So I didn't want people riding. I don't know if my insurance is paid up. So I don't know if throwing rocks at my house or slashing my tires, I don't know if I got the coverage for that. I may never recover.
I don't think black people still. I mean, the young black folks. I don't think they still ride for.
The young black people don't matter though. The youth don't matter. As if the youth are just there for props. Everybody, the young black youth, and we do this for the youth. We don't care about our youth. And everybody that claim, anybody that say youth is an automatic con man and a liar. It's a few that ain't. But the vast majority. So ain't nobody tripping off the youth. It's the old heads.
Oh man, somebody said they about to slide on the crib. Yikes.
See?
Man, ain't nobody riding for Obama like that still. Like not.
Yeah, they do.
Really?
Yeah, they do.
Yikes.
So I was trying to think of all these various. Why is this thing so big? Yes, minimum. There we go. Anyway, I was trying to think who could I put for black conservatism and black Judases, and I looked up the plural of Judases. I just wanted to put Judaside. Right, I had to look it up. How do you make Judas plural? And that's what the dictionary told me Judases is. So, because I think that black conservatism, number one, is infecting and spreading in the community. And I don't even think it's infecting and spreading. I think it's always had a very strong foothold in the black community since the Reconstruction era.
Yep.
And I don't think that we recognize, and I think the vast majority of revolutionary conscious black people are actually black conservatives. And I think the few black people who don't qualify as conservatives due to the intensive indoctrination of the black masses are very vulnerable to conservatism.
We've talked about this a good bit. Like we have drifted, push, pull, drift, whatever verb you want to use, so far to the right that even the radical positions are still extremely conservative, right? Like, so yeah, like I definitely can pick up what you put down. It's also very interesting to me how I'll tell people that I'm Southern and I can acknowledge all the ways that I am conservative in things, right? Like just not in the right left scheme. Right. I tend to think a thing, but recognize that what I think isn't necessarily the truth. It's just what I think. And I don't think a lot of people are mature enough in the positions that they think they take to really ride them all the way out and recognize where those contradictions start popping up. So yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry. And this would be the last thing. Yeah, like somebody just said it. So one thing that I would like for you to do in this is to really define conservative.
Right.
As we start drifting into the conversation so that we kind of have a bar for where conservative is.
Well,
and this will be the last thing, because I've said in spaces that, I'm not right. I don't think I'm right at anything. But I'm still like a black man born and raised in the South. And I bump into my contradictions sometimes, and it's like, oh, yeah, I had to be accountable for that. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Well, conservative is essentially someone who seeks to preserve the status quo. Someone who honors, embraces, and seeks to preserve the status quo and views the status quo as not only legitimate, but something that needs to be defended against anyone who doesn't agree with or seeks to subvert or change or even amend the status quo. So conservatism isn't uniquely right-wing. Like if this was a revolutionary or a socialist society, if this was an ecological, revolutionary, socialist, left-wing society governed by revolutionaries, artists, if this society was structured around gifting, sharing, cooperation, and coordination, if this was the type of society that I think that opposed unjust hierarchies, I would become a conservative right now. And anyone who sought to change or undermine that system, I would fight against them. I would denounce them. I would see them as a threat to our way of life. So in a revolutionary system, I can become conservative. But if there are legitimate, that's what a conservative is, plain and simple. It's not inherently evil. But a reactionary conservative is one who thinks, well, this is a system. Everybody's vegan. It's a secular system. It's an ecological system. Everything is biodegradable and everything is repairable. And the economy is based on sharing and coordination. And there are no billionaires and there are no homeless people. There is no private property, only personal property. And someone came and say, hey, I have some critiques against this system. You think it's a utopian system, and I'm a conservative. I want to preserve this status quo. But then someone comes with a critique saying, well, listen, these are some holes. These are some blind spots. These are some deficits. And I refuse to hear those. Then I become a reactionary conservative because I could be living every policy, every system, every structure that I advocate for could be fully implemented, but I know it's not perfect, that it has to be under not only ongoing scrutiny, but always be tweaked and worked, right? And there are big segments of the population that's not thriving. There are big swaths of discontentment. The ecological programs aren't really restoring ecosystems, or there are certain ecosystems that are being restored and getting attention where other ecosystems are being allowed to collapse. And I'm like, I'm not trying to hear anything of it. How dare you? So the reason why we have to be anti-conservative in this day and age, why there is no justifiable reason for any Black person to be conservative in this day and age, because this is a system that is racist, that is imbalanced in terms of resource distribution, it's sexist, and every other negative hierarchy that you can imagine is the status quo. So in an unjust, racist, anti-African, ecocidal, omnicidal, imperialist, capitalist status quo, there is no room for Black conservative unless you intend to not just portray Black people, but to betray all of humanity. Not just betray all of humanity, but betray all living systems and all living things. So that's what a conservative is. Someone who seeks to preserve the current status quo.
Yeah. I think, one of the things that jumps out is that, like even in saying it, how like we've drifted so far to the right that even now, like still recognizing and wrapping my brain around there is no such thing as like traditional values, right? There is no such thing as the right being more insert anything than the left is. You know what I'm saying? Like it just doesn't show up and it doesn't make sense. So, yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I see people are asking about the divergence between liberals, conservatives. The issue with liberals is, well, under capitalism, the real difference between liberals, because before you can say conservative and there's a broader umbrella, ideological umbrella, because then you have right wing and left wing. And within the right, political right and the political left, you also have liberals and conservatives within those two branches. So you can have a left wing conservative who's under the umbrella of the left wing, where you find if you work within an organization, because what I was talking about conservatism is in the broad overall system, in the dominant system. But let's say you have which I've been a part of, organization that says, listen, we're a Black organization. We've been around since the Black Panthers, since the Civil Rights era. We're a 50, 60-year-old organization. And when we open up our meetings, we pour libations. And when we we meet, and this is our agenda. Because I've been part of organizations that have been around for decades, older than me. And I join and become a rank and file member. And I'll say, listen, there's some things that should change here. And people are like, well, you a young buck. And back in the day, I'm no longer the young buck, but I remember early on, every time I joined a group or an organization, people would always admonish me for trying to come in and change things. Even people I still admire. When I went to work with Mackey, Professor William Mackey and Mackey's to the Three, when I was a member of the National Black and United Front and Sons of Men, I would encounter conservatism within that smaller sphere of people saying, listen, the traditions of the organization are more important than the mission of the organizations. And we will stick to the traditions and the rituals and the practices and everything within this organization, whether or not, irregardless of whether or not it's moving us towards the stated goal or stated mission of the organization. So in this larger system of capitalism and white hegemony, conservatives respect the status quo above all else, whereas liberals are willing to tweak and reform. They're not willing to undermine or replace the status quo, but they're willing to open up participation. They're willing to have girl bosses. They're willing to have transgender soldiers in the U.S. military. They're willing to have gay marriage as long as gay marriages exist under the same type of repressive contractual obligations as heterosexual marriage. So liberals differ from conservatives within an overall oppressive system where they do try to allow for opportunities and greater, wider participation of formerly excluded groups within the system. So you can have a Black president. Liberals will vote for a Black president, but the liberals expect that Black president to give billions of dollars to the Zionist, genocidal Zionist projects, to continue the drone bombing campaigns. They're willing to give you a public option for healthcare, but they're not willing to go as far as single payer, even if that's their rhetoric. And when you really push liberals to say, hey, these are the things we really need, they'll say, well, you're moving too fast, or you're being too destructive, or you're being unrealistic. So liberals are willing to expand participation, but they're not willing to destroy the system. That's what the leftists and radicals and revolutionaries.
Yeah. And that's maintaining, really, like, still using the way that you just framed that is still basically saying that it is still in the left-right political spectrum, not right, like big. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but in the reality, in the strictest terms, liberals are liberal in their operating within the sphere. So you put the liberals in the same box of capitalism and white hegemony. And so Black liberals, bless their hearts, I think that, which has been in my experience, it's possible to engage with Black liberals and to explain things and articulate things to Black liberals, because in order to be a liberal, in order to even entertain inclusion of women in spaces they've been excluded, in order to take a principled stand against the repression of LGBTQ people, in order to advocate for freedom of religion, in order to advocate for, refugees, in order to share the hashtag Black Lives Matter on your social medias, in order to be what we all identify as a liberal, there has to be some level of both understanding of the issues to have those, a liberal solution to the destruction of the ecosystem is not obliteration of industrial capitalism. Their thing is that we all need electric cars. So a liberal will acknowledge climate change is a problem, but then they say, well, we're going to convert to electric cars and we'll put solar panels on the White House. But at the very least, you say, okay, liberal, you understand that climate change is a problem. And then maybe you can start to discuss how inadequate and ineffective and sometimes treasonous their solutions are. Whereas with a conservative, won't even acknowledge climate change, won't even acknowledge that refugees should have human rights. So I even admit that I do not think that liberals and conservatives are exactly the same. And you don't have the same outcomes when you engage with liberals and conservatives, and you don't have the same outcomes when they're in power, when liberals versus conservatives are in power. But in the instance of revolutions, in the instance of a true threat to the status quo, liberals and conservatives have always locked arms and united to fight against a common foe, which is leftist or revolutionary uprisings.
Yeah.
But when there's
no, go ahead.
No, but when there's no perceived or genuine threat to the status quo, liberals like to come over into the leftist circles and play footsies. They're there both to ally, but their main purpose is to prevent to give enough concessions to prevent revolutionary from taking a foothold.
Yeah, like, basically it's like,
and liberals are not worse than conservatives. I see a lot of that. That's not a material reality. That's just not material. It's not a material fact. If you go off of the evidence, if you go off of what can be demonstrated and proven and validated based on evidence, liberals are not worse than conservatives. But I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, like, I mean, I can pick up what you putting on that. You know what I'm saying? And it's an overstatement, right? Liberals are worse than conservatives. Like, I get it. Like, I even I've said that, meaning that at least with a conservative, I know that you don't mean me no good. With a liberal, you come with this well-meaning rhetoric that leaves me in the same position that I was when you encountered me. But
that's not true, though. But that's just not that just isn't supported by the historical record.
I would like to hear you tease that out more, right? Because what I'll say is like Barack Obama was the greatest thing that we ever had happen, right? Like, we could never do any better than Barack Obama. That was like the peak, the pinnacle. Racism was dead. Like, all the good things that we could attribute to the election of Barack Obama. But materially, our conditions didn't change.
But here's the problem. Barack Obama was not a liberal. If you read his book, Visions of My Fathers, if you look at his record prior to becoming president, his short time in the Senate, and his time in the Illinois legislature, mm-hmm. Obama was a centrist. Obama was a right-leaning centrist, if we really had to use the technical formal terms. Because if we go beyond rhetoric, because if you go with rhetoric, George Bush is a liberal. Because remember, when George Bush ran for president, he said he was a compassionate conservative. Yep. Remember? And I'm a compassionate conservatism. And many people attacked him because they said, you're not from Texas. George Bush, the Bush family are New Englanders. They're from the Northeast. They moved down to Texas and put on Spurs and Cowboys hats. But if you look at them historically, in fact, Ronald Reagan picked George Bush as his running mate because George Bush softened him up. because Ronald Reagan was seen as a far right radical. And he was like, and he wanted to balance the tickets. So the people were like, well, Ronald Reagan's far too right wing. So let me run with someone who has more liberal credentials. And also, if we are to believe Gloria Steinem, the feminist, George Bush headed the CIA. And when Gloria Steinem was working with the CIA, she said she was very surprised to find out how liberal the CIA was. So all that to say is Obama's liberal credentials were not earned. They were not based on anything but his persona, his marketing, his public image. Obama was not a liberal president. His policies weren't liberal. His stances weren't liberal. His outcomes were not liberal. He was a right-leaning centrist. If Obama was running for president in any other country, any other so-called developed nation outside of the United States, he would have to run with the Conservative Party. He was far too right-wing for any liberal or Labor Party. He would be a Tory. So in the United States, the political window, the political spectrum is so skewed to the right. In fact, the last liberal president to ever take office in the United States was Jimmy Carter. That he was the last person. If you really want to say, well, what's the difference between liberal and conservative? You'd have to pick our liberal or liberal president versus you have to go back to Jimmy Carter. You have to go back almost half a century, because every president after that could not classify or qualify as liberal.
I think you are right in your argument. I think the problem is that's crazy. Somebody said Nixon was the last liberal.
That can be argued. That can be argued. Because when we're talking about liberal and conservative, we're going to go off of what can be demonstrated, not what can. Now, Nixon in his personal ideology was not liberal, but in his policies, he was. And the reason why he had to govern and implement liberal policies is because of his level of vulnerability. I think too often we in the U.S. political arena, we are too receptive to rhetoric and marketing, and we ignore policies. Like when people tell me, I hate Biden, and I'm like, wow, high five. I hate Biden too. And I asked them, why do you hate Biden? Because he's an old racist. I'm like, he sure is. But why do you hate him as president? Because he ain't done nothing for black people. And I start to say, nobody really focuses on policies. Nobody looks at the DNC policy platform. Nobody looks at the RNC policy platform. We only go off of their marketing. We look at the rhetoric of their most prominent members of the party, the rhetoric and personas, and then we listen to the feedback that we get from commentaries about their leading party officials' rhetoric. But we don't look behind the curtain at the whiz. We don't look behind the curtain and see what really structurally they are doing or intend to do. But someone said that I said that the CIA was liberal. Yes, the CIA is extremely liberal. I'm going to stop looking at the comments. But if you look at Gloria Steinem's biography, she talked about how when she went into the CIA, she encountered a lot of people that had the same point of view as her, the same ideas as her. She thought that the CIA was governed by conservatives and right-wing conservatives, when she found a lot of liberals within the CIA, which again, The record demonstrates that, but I digress.
Yeah, I just, I don't know. I just think that's a wild premise, that the CIA is liberal.
No, I didn't say that the CIA was liberal. I said, well, the CIA is liberal, meaning that the U.S. military is liberal, meaning that they were once a very Again, we have, and I think this is where we slip up.
Can I cut you off for a second? Because I'm thinking about something you said earlier. Using the way that you framed the argument is that the liberal position is we can now have trans people be in the military. Like, so using that as the base, like, okay, yeah, right. I get it. Yeah,
you see now that the U.S. empire is going over,
which goes
threatening to sanction nations that have regressive laws against LGBTQ. They go overseas and tell people that they shouldn't execute homosexuals. They go overseas and try to promote, the CIA, had no issues working with the first president, black female head of state in Liberia. They have no problems of sitting down and carrying out neo-colonialism, sitting across the table with female heads of states in Asia, Myanmar, and Liberia. They have no issues with that. They have no issue.
What you be saying about loosening up to get a tighter grip.
Exactly. So, and a lot of the people within the CIA are in their own personal views, in their own life, as they go out and carry out their assignments, doing their jobs. You'll find that many of them support many of the inclusive, liberal ideas and policies. That's why right now you literally have the far right fascists in the United States are talking about defund the FBI, defund the intelligence apparatus. Right now, you see that the MAGA movement, that the ultra conservatives are literally calling out publicly and attacking the military, the woke military. And I think we, as our community, because ideology has been so neglected. Ideology, we've really kind of shelved ideological struggle, ideological cultivation. We've really shelved that for just pro-blackness, race first. And anybody that comes to us that can either fool or demonstrate to us that they are pro-black, then that's it. Well, end of discussion. Race first. When before, in previous mass struggles or previous historical epochs in Black history, ideology was something that was very aggressively, remember you had the Black nationalists, the Kawaiidists, you had everything from the repatriation movement to the Negro movement under Du Bois in the Garvey era. Ideology was something that was very much appreciated and understood that needed to be struggled with, where people don't really ain't got no time for that, ain't got no interest in it, and don't understand the value of ideological comprehension and ideological positioning. This is very materialist now. People will just attack me very often for targeting people for their ideology, and they're just like, yo, they fighting for Black people. Yeah, as long as they fight, they stand for Black people, Black power. And the first thing I need to know after Black, to me, it's race first, ideology second, agenda or priorities third, and methodology after that. I need to know all those things about you. Conclusion about whether or not I can unite with you, or whether or not you even have any good intentions for our people. But yeah, and it's not really that confusing when we really understand. But I think that more so than anything else, the COINTELPRO movement sought to do, more so than anything else, was to remove and erase Black leftist ideology. And that was the real threat. I say to people all the time, Malcolm X went all over the world. Malcolm X went all over the United States during the height of Jim Crow, calling the white man a devil and telling Black people to arm themselves. And if they are accosted or aggressed by white people, they should shoot them. They should kill that dog. And even though they monitored him, the actions to take that Malcolm's life were initiated after he changed his ideology. They weren't afraid of the white devil. They weren't afraid of take your gun and shoot the white. If somebody put their hands on you, send them to the cemetery. But when he said, I'm Pan-Africanist, this is a multi-state, multinational struggle. I'm going to look internationally, internationalism. I'm secular now. Leave your religion in the closet. I'm all this fracturing, thinking, I know more than you and I'm not willing to work with you. When he became international, secular, Pan-African, when he started to adjust to a more revolutionary ideology, therein became the threat. The same thing with Dr. King. When Dr. King was all love and we want our civil rights, but then as King started to evolve ideologically, right now, guns are everywhere. We got all these Black gun organizations, the Not Fucking Around Coalition, Huey P. Newton Gun Club, and everybody and Black people, guns everywhere. And we got all these reactionary, conservative Black people out here, amosexuals. The guns will solve all problems that afflict us. And the government doesn't fear our guns. As long as you have a certain ideology, your guns, you could have every Black person with a fully equipped AR-15, every Black man, woman, and child, but we're absolutely no threat to the systems and institutions of capitalism and white hegemony. In fact, the majority of the guns present in our community are there to preserve hierarchies, to preserve the unequal distribution of wealth and resources. They're not there to undermine or challenge it. Most Black person, the average Black person, somebody's trying to touch my shit, try to take what's mine, even if you have way more than you could ever need. These guns are not for revolutions. So, ideology. And if you read, who was it that wrote about the obliteration of the white left? Because, and I'll stop here, but COINTELPRO was not initiated first against Black people. The first COINTELPRO, mass deportation, mass incarceration, mass assassination of leadership, the first COINTELPRO to happen in the United States was against the white left. The Pinkerton sweeps, the anarcho-syndicalist, the U.S. communist, McCarthyism. They obliterated the white left in the United States. Ideology. They didn't try to take guns from white people. And after they obliterated the white left, they're like, white boys, take all the guns you want. They got white boys out here with tanks. The 52nd Militia in Missouri had a helicopter and armored vehicles. But they had a reactionary right-wing ideology, so the government didn't give a shit. And then that was the true they didn't call it counter weapons program. They didn't even call it a counter organization program. They called it a counterintelligence program because what you think is what determines your level of threat, not what you have in your hand.
You was spitting right there, bro. You was spitting, man.
Yeah. So Even before we
hold on. You know, look, like I know, you know, they be telling you not to have no silence. But just let that shit cook for a second, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? I know you don't be cooking your vegetables like that, but just let it breathe for a second, man.
I steam my vegetables
right then. You see what I'm saying? You was spinning. You was spinning, man.
Yeah.
I needed this. That was it. Yeah, like that was it. That was it, bro.
Right. Yeah, so people get confused. People say liberals, CIA. But yeah, liberals inundate every element of this society, just like conservatives do. And they are not the same. And to challenge them and the way we confront them. And one thing I don't like also, and I say this a lot too, we so quick to say, oh, ain't no difference between Democrats and Republicans. Ain't no difference between liberals and conservatives are all the same. All white people are the same. But on the other side, white people study intensely every single minor divergence within our community. They look at the difference between northern Negroes and southern Negroes, city Negroes and suburban Negroes, educated Negroes and self-educated or not formal Egypt. They look at the immigrant blacks versus the citizens and naturalized blacks. They look at every single element, tribe, hood, block to block. They look at black Muslims versus black. You will never hear an elite white person. You'll never hear a white person who holds real power and resources say, all them colored folks or all niggas are the same. The only people you say, oh, just all blood are the powerless trailer park, toothless rednecks who don't really wield power and don't really have any real resources. The people who are the fodder, the cannon fodder of white hegemony are the only people you ever hear say, all blacks are the same. But the white elites, or as Wise Intelligent call them, the globe holders, the population controllers, the globe holders and the population controllers, the true white elites, recognize the most minute. They understand divergences and differences within the black community that we don't even recognize yet. We got to go to their periodicals. We got to go to their peer-reviewed journals to learn something about ourselves because it's so they study those differences so minutely. The black family, they study us so intensely, and we think we can challenge that or somehow construct effective opposition against our oppressors without understanding their internal conflicts, their internal divergence, their different strata and hierarchies within their group. All the same. Oh, forget them. That is intellectually lazy. And it is dangerous for us to do that.
Yeah, you as the youth say, you caught a body tonight, bro. You caught a body. Like, yeah. Yeah. But I put it in the chat, but I'll say it, man. We talk about it at work. You know, to be black is necessary, but it is not sufficient. Like, just
amen.
Listen, man. You know, we talk about it on here a whole lot of times where it's like, well, I'm rooting for everybody black. Well, Candace Owens black. Kanye West black. You know, what's your boy name? William Hannibal Thomas black.
Oh yeah, we got to talk about old boy. Like I said, this is one of the most influential. As I engage with black people on a day-to-day basis, individually or within various groupings, I see his impact more than I see Garvey, more than I see Nat Turner. And this is a black man who lived for 20 years. He died, I think he died in like the 1930s, but he was literally born and lived 20 years before the Civil War. He lived for 20 years within the system, under the system of chattel slavery. He fought in the Civil War and they blew his arm off. He had one arm. He caught one of them big lead balls and they had to chop it. You ever see those movies that show the battlefield medicine? where they just hacksawing. They give you a chunk of leather to bite.
That's it.
And he was a war hero. He was a war hero. But I guess we could talk about him because my position is black people, if you are a person, if you are black and you seek to make a positive contribution to the just aspirations of your people, whether it's all out revolution or you to do a little better than we did yesterday, regardless of your level of commitment or loyalty or love for African people, the only way to be a true asset to African people is if you adopt a leftist ideology and support leftist political, social, and economic positions and policies. There is not only do you fail to be an asset to your people as a black conservative, if you are black and conservative, you are, by not just definition, but through practice, a race traitor. You are a traitor. Many black conservatives see themselves as the pillar and the standards, but black conservatism is treasonous, and every black person has to constantly look internally for when conservatism arises within you as an individual or within your circles, you have to confront it and deconstruct it and purge it. And now I'm ready to talk about.
Yeah, you got you in the chat, people asking who's the author of that book.
Oh, it's John David Smith. He's a historian. But it's basically a book about a book. It's a biography about his life, but it's an overview of his book, his notorious book, which is called The American Negro. I had a copy of The American Negro and I lent it out and it never came back to me. I swear I've lost at least more than 100 books that I lend out and don't come back. So now I'm kind of a book hoarder. You know, you can still, if you want to check out my books, you can come, but you have to sit right here. You know, I'll give you some tea. I'll give you some sauteed tofu and broccoli, and you can sit here and look over the books. But you ain't nobody taking them out of my house no more. So, but anyway, let me just tell y'all something, little something about William Hannibal Thomas. William Hannibal Thomas was an abolitionist, and when Abraham Lincoln put out the call to fight with the Union Army to preserve the Union and to end chattel slavery, William Hannibal Thomas took up the call and donned the blue uniform to fight those Southern Confederates. And it is said that he was one of the bravest soldiers, and he was injured almost fatally. He was shot in a musket lodged in his arm, and they had to, let me see if I can find how he looked. And he was also a prominent member of there he is. He was one of the first black people to be awarded a Purple Heart. Let me see. Let me see. Let me share this. Okay. This is his later stage. I think this was literally taken months before he died. But he has a Purple Heart. You see, he's missing an arm. And when did he die? Now I have to look it up. I don't know why I don't just look shit up. I don't look stupid. Still don't say when he died here. Anyway, he fought it. He's a Civil War, but you can look him up. But this is on the National Purple Heart. He was one of the first colored men to be awarded a Purple Heart. He was a staunch abolitionist. He was a very strong advocate and worked with the Freedmen's Bureau to help once Africans were emancipated to make sure that we got literacy, fighting for literacy campaign. He worked with the various agencies to help reconnect Africans who were separated from their family members, their loved ones, and there was a very strong campaign for literacy, reconnecting families, resettlement, and various. He was a Black hero. He was one of the most well-known and one of the most beloved Black men in the United States in the late 1800s. And he was going on speaking tours. And one of his most famous positions is he was what was called at that time an abolitionist, or the abolitionists were also called Christian radicals. And because we know that Christianity was used to justify slavery, and we all know that, but there were certain Christians, mainly from the certain sects of the Methodist Church, but what's that other abolitionist group?
The Quakers.
The Quakers, damn, thank you. The Quakers, the oatmeal folks, they were considered radicals because of both their pacifism and refusal to take up arms to kill other people, and their abolitionist views, which even predate the Civil War by over a century. So he stated that one of his mentors, which was a white abolitionist by the name of Schindler, and he literally said that conservatism is a crime. He said in his book that he, quote, conservatism is a crime. And what made conservatism a crime was that the status quo as it is so horrendous that if you do not actively fight against the status quo, by default, you are complicit in the atrocities. Just even now, we tell white folks it's not enough to be non-racist. You have to be anti-racist. Because being non-racist white folks means you can still greatly profit from racism. And so he goes about his life fighting for Black people. He loved Black people. Black folks loved him. He advocated for Black people. Black people would show up in droves and sit in halls to hear him speak about his exploits in the war. They love hearing how he would kill them Southern crackers with his musket and run them through with his bayonet. He was literally a celebrity to the extent that a Black man could be a celebrity in the 1800s. In the Reconstruction era, he was one of the Black heroes, right? And throughout his career, at some point, he became disenchanted with Black people. He became disenchanted with Black people, and they literally call Hannibal the father of Black conservatism, right? And I'm just going to read an excerpt that I had pulled up from his book, right? He became disenchanted with the rate of progress for Black people. He felt that we as a race did not take proper advantages of the opportunities that were laid before us by our former enslavers, right? And so he wrote a book called The American Negro. And basically, the American Negro was an indictment of the entire Black race in America. And the excerpt from the book, he said, the Negro, immersed in poverty, steeped in ignorance, stifled with immorality, inherently lazy, and a born pilferer. He went on to talk about everything from the lack of hygienic practices to sexual promiscuity to the lack of industrial fortitude of Black people was the reason why we are not progressing and we have not reached parity with our former enslaver. And this is in 1901. 1901. And many of the Ku Klux Klan and other white nationalist and white racist groups began to call him out, to bring him out, to give lectures to the white majority. And he would literally warn white people to keep distance from Negroes, to not give charity or relief or support to Negroes. Because number one, it could corrupt the white, which he stated where is it? That whites were superior and blacks were inferior. And for whites to use their superiority in the forms of charity, support, would not only corrupt the white race, it would drive the black race deeper into deeper levels of laziness and entitlement. And at this very time, Booker T. Washington and later W.B. Du Bois came out to denounce him. But he started off as a champion as literally taking up arms, and he literally gave, which hand was that? He literally gave his right arm for black people, only to turn around and say, not only did we not deserve his personal sacrifice, we did not deserve the sympathy or support of the larger white society.
I just want to acknowledge that you said this man gave his right arm for black folks.
Wasn't it the right arm? Did I say that wrong?
No, that was definitely his right arm. I just think that's hilarious.
Yes.
This man said he literally gave his right arm.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Actually, this is the wrong photo. I remember there was a photo, but this is the famous photo.
That's the one you showed.
There's not many. Yeah, but this was taken in 1922. There was another photo I had seen where it said it was taken just months or weeks before his death. I don't see it. But this man was a household name. This man was a well-known hero who turned on us and said, you know, we're not worthy. And here's the thing about the American Negro. It's written in kind of that old time English. But if you change up some of the wording, if you change Negro to black or African American, that book could be written today.
Yep.
That book could be written today. And I think the book would be more popular today than it was back then amongst blacks.
Yep.
I say all the time, in their effort to maintain their power and to oppress black people, whites have more black allies than enemies. And I wish it wasn't true.
Bro, that's depressing.
Yeah. It can be. It can be. But, you know, fortunately, I think it's both a positive and a negative that he's been lost to history. Because once, I do think that, as Dr. Clark said, you know, these Uncle Toms should be thrown into the dustbin of history. But the problem is that his legacy and his rhetoric, like when I heard about this man, it was in the 90s, maybe 94, 95, when I first came across the American Negro and then Black Judas. And Black Judas got much more wider circulation, but I read this book. And at the same time, I was like talking about, it helped me to realize early on, people like Bill Cosby, much later Ice Cube, but individuals, these black icons and black heroes, you know, it helped me to realize class consciousness because, again, William was also a member of the black bourgeoisie. He was more fluent and more traveled and had more status than 99% of all other black people in the country at that time. This man had reached the promised land personally. He had a personal wealth, or he had fame and notoriety. He had access to spaces, or what Jay-Z called rarefied air. Mm-hmm. He was able to sit at the table, you know, same shit. And there are so many black Hannibal Thomases out here, William or Bill Hannibal Thomas. There's so many of them out here. And when he came out back in 1901 with this denunciation of the black race, there was more widespread condemnation. And today, in 2023, you can have a black man say, I love Hitler. In the internet era, because this brother, really, the American Negro wasn't even a full-on book. It was a pamphlet. And black people still had relatively high rates of illiteracy. The information did not spread as aggressively and readily as it did back then. But we got a black man who sat and said, I love Hitler. and embrace the enemies of our race on national and global television. And when I walk in my community, there's still nothing but love for Kanye West. So we don't even have the level of racial integrity, or what I call racial esteem, meaning that we got love for people who love us and we got animosity for people who disrespect us. We don't even have the racial esteem in 2023 that we had in 1901. I can pull up more condemnations of prominent blacks condemning and denouncing Hannibal than I can of those denouncing Kanye West. And there's people that if they were alive today, people that are alive today, they'll be like, Hannibal, he got his coin. Or look at you and be like, well, I don't support Hannibal. What did you do for black people? He fought in the war. You ain't done nothing for black people. Why you hate? He got money, you don't. He lost his arm fighting for us. You know, we can't even identify the enemies in 2023. We don't even understand who's on our side and who's against us right now. So this is the father of black conservatism. And this man's ideology is getting stronger as time goes on. As the ideology of everybody from Booker T. Washington to W.B. Du Bois to Garvey, we have all of their symbols. I just went to the African street festivals and I saw all of our great ancestors from the civil rights era, from the Black Power era, from the repatriation. I saw every direction I look. I saw red, black, and green. I see the symbols of African pride, African black nationalism, black power. But even though the symbols, the names of Du Bois, Booker T, of Garvey live on, their ideology and their analysis is not as prominent as the man who we don't know. So we got their symbols, but we got his ideology. We got the black liberation symbols and aesthetic, but we have the black conservative ideology that's prominent and most dominant amongst our race. And people to this day come and call me a liberal. Black people will be like, you're a liberal or you're a leftist as an insult. So anyway,
let's go to the chat, bro.
All right, let's take it to the people. Especially we want to hear from the black conservatives or even the black liberals. Huh? There's a lot of black conservatives. Ice Cube is a black conservative. Kanye West is a black conservative. Jay-Z is a black conservative. We've got a lot of conservatives. Chuck D is a black conservative.
No. I'm talking about in the chat. No, I agree with that.
I thought you were talking about, Obama is a black conservative. Because I think
conservative. Boy, look here. What? Hey, look, you bringing up old stuff about my old life, boy.
Who that is?
Yeah.
I gotta get,
but like
get you.
I think. Huh? I was talking about Chuck D.
Yeah.
Oh,
Chuck D. Yeah. Well, that's entertainers, but Umar Johnson is a conservative. The Irritated Genie is a conservative. And Mwalamu Baruti is a conservative. They're not even liberals.
I only heard y'all talk about old boy. We gotta talk about old boy in the chat. We gotta talk about old boy in our private chat. Because I don't want y'all to get sued on my point.
Who?
But yeah. Your boy, not Instagram.
Who?
Your boy, not Instagram. IG. The Irritated Genie. You gonna sue y'all?
Yeah. But he didn't sue me. He could sue me for saying he sued me. He sent me a cease and desist letter.
Yeah.
So he threatened to sue me. And he sent me a cease and desist letter. I didn't change anything I said or I did, but I amended. He sent me a cease and desist, irritated Genie, because Brother Polite is a conservative. But he sent me a cease and desist letter because I said he beat his wife. And that's technically not true. What he did was assault his wife. And by assault, you can't assault someone by not putting your hands on them. If you make someone fear that you were going to do them physical or bodily harm, that's considered assault. And so his wife has testified and publicly stated that she lived under constant psychological and emotional abuse and threats of physical harm. And there was one instance where she was working on some restoration project and he took a sledgehammer and smashed up the restoration project. There was another time they were staying in a hotel room and they had a very loud confrontation and he smashed the window pane of the screen door and smashed the glass. And she said there are several instances where she was physically intimidated into backing down and felt that she was under the constant threat of physical harm. So, but I just called him a wife beater when he was a wife intimidator, and a wife in his abuse was emotional, psychological abuse. So he was going to sue me on that technicality. He threatened to sue
me. All right, bro. Put the link out.
Well, I wanted to find where Chuck D had posted after
listen, man, after with Chuck D, who did he write? Who did he write that like it was sad to see him go Colin Powell?
Right. That's why I say any black man, I think that's you got to be conservative. and that's what I was looking for, where he had posted a dedication to Colin Powell and said that Colin Powell was a great man. How can you conclude? How can you have a leftist ideology or a leftist outlook and have any type of sympathy for, have anything but utter hatred and disgust for Colin Powell? He's an international war criminal.
Be quiet, man. Like I tell people that all the time, man. All you gotta do is be quiet.
I don't see the post. I like the post because people think I just be saying outlandish shit. You know, and I really don't like to be outlandish.
Oh no, you thrive on the outlandishness.
I keep both feet firmly grounded. I am really a rational, evidence-based dude. I just go where the evidence takes me. I don't even like to speculate about shit. I reserve all my fantasy and make-believe. I reserve all of that for video games and sci-fi novels. But when I'm engaging in the real world, especially with our people, I try to stay strictly evidence-based.
So this is an interesting question. Hey, Anthony D, is this Moose? Like just respond in the chat if this Moose, because I think this Moose. But
where?
Anthony D. But what he was saying was his question was Dr. Clark a liberal?
No. Dr. Clark would not qualify as a liberal.
I didn't think so.
Dr. Clark was a leftist. He was a far leftist. In fact, he was even considered to be what they call a pinko leftist, which means he wasn't an official communist, but ultimately he aligned with the communists. Oh, and look, he even put up a dedication to Desmond Tutu. Ugh. Oof. You know, yikes. Chuck D has great taste in music, but he has horrible taste in political figures. But I don't see his, maybe he took it down, because when he posted that, I actually went into the comment sections. I don't usually mess with celebs like that, but every now and then I figure I bought enough Public Enemy albums that he should have to hear my. I've bought my way in.
Hey man, listen. Well, I'm talking about. I can't remember. My brother sent me that.
Like
somebody sent it to me, man. I just bust out laughing. I was like, man,
I can't find it. But he also jeffing with Desmond Tutu.
Not Chuck D.
Yeah. So I would say Chuck D is actually a liberal. You know, he's a black liberal, so I think he can be reasoned with. I'd like to imagine that if someone was able to sit down with Chuck, they could probably get him to see the error of his ways.
Whoa. Desmond Tutu Horn Boys?
Huh? Well, he was part of the largest pedophile organ, the Catholic Church, so I would be surprised, but I don't know anything about. But he harmed boys and girls in South Africa with that Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Oh, all right, we can agree.
But anyway, we gonna talk to the people. And I like to say Ice Cube fits this because Ice Cube, people thought he came out with that bullshit. I'm just talking about the conditions that we going on in the hood when he wrote all this gangster rap and was the father of the gangster rap era. And people thought he was anti-establishment.
We ain't gonna disrespect Ice-T like that. But
I didn't say Ice-T, I said Ice Cube.
No, that's what I'm saying. You said he was the father of the gangster rap, and I was like, we're not gonna disrespect Ice-T.
Well, Ice Cube is self-identified as the godfather of gangster rap. But really, it's Schoolie D, not Ice-T.
I give you Schoolie D, but we just not gonna disrespect Ice-T though.
I would never disrespect Ice-T.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Because Deuce Deuce Revolver is his problem solver. So anybody, I don't want to have to look down the barrel of that Deuce Deuce Revolver. And it's funny, he said that in the 80s. Like, that was such a... You pull out a 22 revolver now, you pull out any kind of revolver. People gonna laugh at you.
Listen, boy.
Oh, Tutu wasn't Catholic. What was Tutu? Whatever.
Nah, 22 mad.
Huh?
Yeah, but, like, they weren't carrying big guns back then.
Yeah. Because the whole thing was to be low-key.
That's it, man.
But to this day, I think revolvers are the most sensible guns.
Absolutely.
Because you can take a revolver, load it, and put it in the drawer for he's Anglican. Okay, he's Anglican. I apologize. He was Anglican.
No, Dre, I did not know that he got love for Ice-T.
Who?
Somebody asking. I didn't know about your love for Ice-T.
I only love Ice-T because at first he loved me.
Whoa, 8-3. Wow, that's crazy.
What?
Y'all know Adolfo out here?
Who?
Tell Adolfo. Somebody asked like,
where? I ain't seen or heard from Adolfo. Where he be at?
I don't know. Like, Adolfo?
Yeah, he been in my house. He slept in my house. He drove up from Mississippi.
Crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. No, I didn't know that.
You mean the lawyer? The warrior lawyer.
Yeah.
The warrior lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's my boy, man. I ain't talked to Adolfo in a while. We text every now and then.
Yeah. But the Anglican Church has as many accusations and cover-ups for child sexual abuse as the Catholic Church. So same difference. Anyway, when are we supposed to open this up?
Let's do it.
All right, hey, man, I'm gonna share it.
We're gonna be respectful. We're gonna be kind to each other. We're gonna keep it to what we're talking about. We're not gonna be disrespectful.
All right, so I shared the link in the comments. I'll share it periodically, or I'll try to catch if you because the thing on the comment thing kind of scrolls fast. So if you typed a comment in the past, it was and it's lost, resend, or you can do like a hyper chat or make a small modest contribution to the just aspirations of Black Power Media, and that'll star your comment. And you can get your comment in that way. So there's several ways for you to join the discussion tonight. We're going low. And before we do that, I want to wish a happy birthday to my son, my second son, Sekou. Today's his birthday.
Oh, man. That's great, bro.
Yeah. But he's a teen now. He don't. We can't do the pancakes and the funny hats. So because he want to run the streets with his homies, his crew, instead of have us sing happy birthday and dance around in the house. So they. But I had more than my share of little parties for the kids. So, but anyway, shout out to Say Cool. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Say Cool. He was real live, man. Like I really enjoyed chatting with him.
Yeah, he was a cool dude. Yeah,
very
low
funny.
key. Yeah. So, little honor roll student, which kind of hurts me. I strive for mediocrity. I don't
aim low.
Exactly. Keep your head down.
Yeah,
My oldest son, man, he bring home a B, and we'd be like, "Yeah, high five! He brought home a B." Now my Sekou bring home a B. He's like, "What's wrong with you?" Setting that bar. He set the bar so high, so he didn't listen. I'm telling you, I said just stay right at the tippy top of the bell curve, and nobody will bother you. So I guess don't nobody want to holler at us tonight.
That's crazy.
Yeah, because they know a bunch of conservatives out here. And I think we got messed up because this is like the other link. It's probably a bunch of people clicking on the dead link. I got to go in and fix that. And then people mad we call Ice Cube a Black Judas or a Black conservative.
Ain't nobody mad about that. They can't be.
Yeah. Well, if we don't have any questions, comments, or criticisms, do you believe that?
I can't.
Yeah.
I cannot.
Oh, we got somebody coming in.
Thank
you, Chi Matcha. You're on live with the Rational Radicals.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi.
Welcome.
I wanted to ask a question. Do you think that if we address the internalized white supremacy, that would impact the conservatism? Because if you, like you always say, like they're afraid of what we think, and we're all suffering from varying degrees of internalized white supremacy. And the greater the depth of the internalized white supremacy is, the more prominent the display of anti-Blackness will be, because white supremacy is ultimately anti-Black. So we can address that, or at least that's what I think. I guess it's a question, and more so it's like it's an opinion. That's what I think. If we address the internalized white supremacy as a tactic, then it will alleviate some of the detrimental conservatism. Thoughts?
You want to go first, or?
No, you can start it off.
Well, first of all, I want to thank her because it's such an easy question. I guess she didn't want us to struggle. Absolutely. To me, I think semantics matter. Semantics is extremely important because, meaning affects thought, but also the term can affect the thought and can adjust meanings. They're not supreme. They are not a supreme race. They are not a supreme people. So I would like to say internalized white pathology. And there are also a lot of Black people, because our average point of view of a white supremacist is like a skinhead or a Klansman or even like Donald Trump. And there are a lot of people who have deep-seated internalized, as you stated, white supremacy, but they hate a Klansman. They would love an opportunity to punch a Nazi or to stomp out a skinhead. So they were like, well, yeah, I don't have internalized white supremacy because I hate white people, or I think the white man is the devil. So I'm not a white supremacist. So you can be anti-white, hate white folks, and still have internalized quote unquote white supremacy. That's why I think it's more accurate to call it white pathology, because there are a lot of Black people like Papa Doc Duvalier, Jomo Kenyatta, Irritated Genie, Dr. Johnson, who have a lot of white pathologies, even though they hate white supremacists and they hate white supremacy. So I think we have to purge white pathologies it's inadequate to purge white supremacy, because you have a lot of black people that disassociate, that says, well, I'm a black capitalist, black banks, black manhood, black masculinity, and ain't no white folks in the room, ain't no white folks around, but there's still. So I agree with you. I understand. I think the semantics of this is important, but if you say white supremacy, a lot of black, and say purge your internal white supremacy, there are a lot of black people who will exempt themselves immediately because they were like, well, I don't got nothing to do with no white folk. And that frees them. But if you say internalized white pathology, you can hate white folks. You can be infected by somebody you hate. You can be contaminated by somebody that you no longer physically around. So I would leave it at that. So we got at least one other caller, Sister Diamondin will be with you right after Chichi Macha. But that's my position. Yes, we do have to purge internalized white pathology, not just white supremacy.
But just one thing on that, like I think that's the is they are prioritizing whiteness as supreme and just unaware of it. That's what the colonized mind is. They view white people as supreme. So we keep siding with whiteness. Even though physically, like, okay, you may express, like I had a relative, like couldn't stand white people. I grew up in the Jim Crow South, grew up in a baby boomer, but suffered from a supreme case of white supremacy because certain things that she would say or ways that she would act, it showed that deep down she thought that they were superior. She would never say that, and she would never like openly, but I mean, I think that's what it is.
Well, that's a pathological position. If you have something within you that you can't recognize or acknowledge, that's a pathological, not a supremacist condition. That's a pathological condition.
Okay, I can see that.
All right, sis. I appreciate your ongoing support and chiming in. I appreciate that question. And yes, you are correct. Even if we have some semantical disagreement, you're absolutely correct. We do have to purge ourselves with. And then another thing is, a lot of times we go too far, where I don't purge people. Black people think purging ourselves of white, they'll say, well, I'm anti-evolution, or I'm anti-dialectical and historical materialism because that's white. And we call everything we don't like white, and we think we can just dismiss things. I say I'm vegan. Oh, that's white. I'm an atheist. Oh, that's white. So it's more so the pathologies, the dysfunctional, the harmful elements of any culture, but mainly the dominant culture, more so white pathology, not white supremacy.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right, sis, I'm gonna go ahead and bring in our next caller. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
You too.
Hello.
Okay, Shirley, you next. Please hold on. I know I didn't say your name correctly. Can you?
No, it's Diamond. It's Diamond in the Rough. 2 words. That's
Diamond
my
okay.
YouTube handle. Diamond in the Rough. But thank you, brothers, for the conversation.
You're exposing my struggles with literacy over here.
Hey,
but go on. I'm sorry.
Every day. And I'm an educator here in Northeast Ohio. And I teach this period of African history, Civil War to the modern day. And one of our questions that I have is over understanding where there is a connection, if there is, between some of the Black conservatism that Hannibal Thomas talked about, and of course I think Booker T as well talked about, and the Nation of Islam references in terms of their economic policy, if you will, and even Marcus Garvey to an extent, and how that jibes with, is there a way that this question of conservatism can allow us to pull within and then do the work of making that impact that many of those brothers talked about. They all talked about do for self. Ida B. Wells even survived the failure of the Black Reconstruction period with her family losing money in the banks and all of that. And she became, almost a one-man, a one-woman crew against some of the injustices. So is there a way that this question of conservatism can allow us to pull within and work within and do for self? Because I think there is a valid point I make in my class when talking about Brother Garvey, he had a point in talking to the Klan that we need to pull within, do our homework and our work first, such that we could grow and prosper on our own terms and controlling our own, fate, if you will.
I don't think. I mean, Diallo kind of changed my thinking on some of this stuff. So the first question I would ask, really to Diallo is do for self a conservative position?
Oh, I don't think it is, but I'm sorry.
I don't either. So that's why I was asking Diallo, like, is do for self a conservative position?
No, do for self is a tactic and strategy, and it is a brand. In a certain applications. It's not inherently, you can be a conservative or a radical and adopt a do for self position, but I do think that a lot of times it can get people in the arena of being reactionary because how do you define the self? Because if you look at how many people, when they say do for self, for many of us, it's a very broad umbrella. Self means all Black people, but some people can also define self as the individual or my immediate family. So when you do for self, because self is often a limiting and constricting term, I think it's had its run. I just don't think it is it is applicable in the globalized, in the 1900s post-Reconstruction era, in the whole cast down your pale Booker T versus WEB, and then later a kind of the Garvey era. It made sense, but when we apply it today, it very often falls into individualism. It falls into the rhetoric. It feeds into the rhetoric of around entrepreneurialism and Black banks and Black capitalism. So I think do for self is often captured. I think you would find people like Puff Daddy, or even Clarence Thomas has even spewed do for self rhetoric and said that do for self means that you don't have welfare, you don't have. So I think that do for self has it's just not inherently conservative, but it is, as far as a tactic or strategy and rhetoric, it's kind of gone. It's outlived its usefulness.
Well, it's been bastardized at this point because I think when those authors who I mentioned talked about it, they talked the collective self, not the individualized. Because
a century ago, right?
Yes, it was individual acumen and expertise, if you will, but within the larger context of everybody. At the bottom rise, everybody rise. And that period after the Civil War was the greatest level of entrepreneurship, of individual businesses, of folks trying to do just that, given the pushback that happened in terms of the Reconstruction era. So folks were trying to do that, and they were cut off at the knees every time. So I think it's
which I think that is evidence of the fact that businesses are not revolutionary.
Yes, they're not.
Or liberatory structures. I think we give too much credence, we have too much faith and hope, and I use this term, pun intended, we invest too much in entrepreneurialism in Black businesses.
Yeah, but look what happened after. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go on.
No, let's look what happened at the turn of the century, when businesses were run amok, that age of the Victorians, when they polluted the air and the water and, ran roughshod over workers and all that. Absolute exploitation of child labor, of women's labor, of people's labor, that pushed this country, pushed the Western world into the so-called 21st century in terms of between the wars and all of that. So it's been shown that you let business run amok, it will screw you over, literally and figuratively. So,
but
go ahead.
We see the most effective labor, the most effective left-wing struggles arose from organizing labor, not organizing business owners. In fact, in most progressive struggles, the business class aligns with the imperialists. They align with the state against the laborers. So whether it is, you look at India, you look at the former Soviet Union, you look at most Caribbean and sub-Saharan African uprisings, or even Middle Eastern, they've been either student or workers' movements. As a student of the revolution, I don't see any entrepreneurial uprising. The only time in history I ever saw a true entrepreneurial uprising is when the merchant class overthrew the monarchs.
Okay.
And we saw that the merchant class taking power away from the monarchs intensified enslavement, colonization, oppression, and destruction of ecosystems. So even if we could, as this empty promise of entrepreneurial movement, entrepreneurial leadership, entrepreneurial uprising, black entrepreneurial challenge to white power, even if that's the case, the one time we saw the entrepreneurial or mercantile or merchant class rise up, they did shit even worse. They just made the exploitation more efficient. They made the extraction of wealth from the masses and from the colonies more efficient. So I think that Black entrepreneurs, if they are working class entrepreneurs, which the vast majority of them are, we just count them amongst the working classes because they're not of the investor or the elite.
Right.
But those other entrepreneurs, right, the multimillionaire and billionaire class, I think we should view them with hostility and distrust.
Well, they're enemies.
They should be exactly class enemies, internal class enemies.
So where is the push point then for our young people? And I'm saying young because I'm a grandma. I'm at the back end of my work life. So where is the push point or the pressure point that our students, the kids I see in my classroom, college level? Because I always talk about some of the points that you talk about. I talk about the potential ability of youth in the 50s and 60s to make that pressure known. And we know that was going on all over within the African world, within the Caribbean, within Mexico and other places. Where's the push point then for them to try to right some of this? Because I hope that there is a coalition of the willing that sees some of this injustice and wants to really kind of transform it or change it and uproot it and come anew, you know.
Skip, you work with the children.
Yeah, I mean, you know, ultimately, we definitely have to give children more information. Yeah, and they'll kind of come to the conclusions that they'll come to. Especially if we give them good information to kind of be present, right, as they work through things because they're intelligent. But I don't think that it happens quickly, and I think it doesn't. I think a lot of times when we ask these type of questions, like, you know, it's like, well, how can we make it happen as fast as possible? And I just don't know how it happens any faster, because what we've talked about a lot here, what Jared talks about a lot on the channel, is just how, you know, influenced by media everybody is. And you know, like when you're looking at this conversation in particular, I mean, looking at the counter, we're almost at an hour and 40 minutes, right? And people are pulling all of that other information in 15-second clips, right? Like, it's really hard to get into the nuances that it takes to kind of tease the thing all the way out in a way that makes sense when you're not in community. The other thing that I think is really important that we have to keep doing is recognizing that, like, we're just going to take those steps in that direction. And that's really all we can do. It's something Diallo and I have gone back and forth on, but I definitely, you know, accept his position more and more that radicalizing isn't something that I do to somebody. It's not something that I do for somebody. It's something that I do with somebody.
It's a process. That's right.
Yep. And it's
but
like
the system understands that reality, because that's why they're pushing back on shutting down the information, because we've seen the studies that say that where the information is more open, as you say, and more available to students, because my students began asking even before George Floyd, I'll come to figures like it is, Miss Calhoun, and say, well, ask your parents why your education is shut down. I'm not the one. But they know,
but you know, but this
that opening.
Yeah, but this is the other thing that I think, right? Like in deschooling society, one of the things that Ilias talks about is that in capitalism, it teaches you that doing anything for yourself is irresponsible and dangerous. Right? Like, you know, you wouldn't work on your own teeth, you wouldn't work on your own health care. So, you know, school is another thing. And I think we just have to figure out how to build independent institutions.
Right. And it has to go ahead.
Go ahead. No, ma'am.
Well, no, it needs to go back to where it was, because I'm old enough to remember liberation academies in the 70s after Gary 1972. And the call was to organize our education. And that's exactly what we did before Black Studies, before Center for Pan-African Culture, Africana Studies at Kent State, where I'm at. It was strictly Saturday school, independently ran, 4 or 5 hours on a Saturday, self-funded. We put together money to educate 50 kids every Saturday, along with remediation. And we did that.
And what I'll say in response to that is what somebody put in the chat. I forgot to write down who said it, but they said that do for self is not self-determination. And what we're talking about is really putting self-determination in place, right? Like really educating ourselves, working in our communities, building in our communities. Like those are the things that we're talking about. And this is one of the first times that I've really been able to value Diallo's position on semantics being important.
Right.
Because I think this really clarifies it, right? Like really like honing down on what we're saying and why we're saying it, being ideologically clear, I think has a value that we need to be more keen on in moving
Absolutely.
forward.
And I will say, Diallo, I'm rooting for you on Friday. They be trying to put you on the road, bro. I'll be listening and be trying to hold you down a little bit.
I appreciate you, sir.
Don't do that.
I appreciate you.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I understand. I'm glad to see.
Discourse is awesome. You'll hear.
All right, thank you, sis.
Thank you for your work. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. All right, Shirley.
Hey,
thank
Diallo.
you so much for holding on, sis. You've been holding on
problem.
For a long time.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, Skipp, don't do Diallo like that. He hangs in there on Friday when everybody's coming for him.
Don't nobody be coming for that man.
Yes, they do. I mean,
they be at my throat, man.
Yes,
thank you.
And I'm like, I don't see why they get so upset with him. I mean, he's just
because Diallo is a troll, and y'all falling for the overdote. Y'all listen. Y'all are clearly falling for the banana in the tailpipe if you think Diallo is the victim here.
I don't say he's a victim, but he's not the big bad wolf they make him out to be. He's just an intelligent brother speaking his opinion on stuff he's read and research. I mean, what's wrong with that? Nothing. Okay, so so this is going back to Black conservatism. So I think a lot of times when people, like I saw this in the chat this evening, where people were saying many Black people are conservative, and what they would name off are not things that are actually conservative, but actually things that right-wing propaganda has branded as conservative, like strong families, not wanting to do crime, just things like that. And I'm like, that's not conservative. That's just being a decent human being. And people need to be very careful of not to fall for right-wing propaganda, because that can get you caught up. I can't see any thinking, intelligent, self-respecting Black person identifying with anything conservative. Because when I think of conservative, I think of political and economic. And those two things, politically and economic conservatism, means me no good. So what are your thoughts on that?
You're absolutely right. You know,
that's my thought.
I'd say, but here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
Conservatism is very seductive to Black people. You know, Black people, we love the rhetoric and promises of conservatism, and we hate the practices and policies of conservatism. Black people, there's another book I read that Locking Up Our Own. In the early stages of the mass incarceration policies, Black people were fervent supporters of it. And other policies like legalization, especially in decriminalization of drugs, was attacked by the Black community as a agenda to destroy the Black community. And even our beloved Kwame Ture came out against legalization of cannabis in the 70s and 80s. And I didn't want to know that, but we always look at, because Black people, like you said, we do value the family. We are anti-crime. We are a very pro-social people, you know, and so we want what's best. If you look at the Black voting trends in Black, it's not necessarily the party that claims to do good for the most people, that the party that is able to sell Black people the idea that they intend to work for the greater good generally gets the most Black votes. So even though we are very susceptible and receptive to conservative rhetoric about family, about crime, about faith, about sacrifice, personal sacrifice, about hard work, about meritocracy, we're very susceptible to the rhetoric. But every time the conservatives take power, they institute policies that undermine the family.
Right.
They institute policies that exacerbate crimes. They intensify the punishment and the atrocities committed against those. You know, they undermine faith-based institutions, turning them into wards of the state. They try to merge state and religion in theocratic oppression. So it's very hard to now was mad that I called Imalamu Baruti a conservative. And because a lot of that men, we're going to defend and respect men, and we're going to protect women and by taking away their rights. And the rhetoric of the right always been attractive to large segments of the Black community, and we fall for the okie doke all the time. The right wing just recently in Florida and other places came and said they were going to protect mutilation, they were going to protect children from sexual predators, and Black folks went and many of us fell for that lie, and now they're we thought they were going to transgender people and ban gender neutral bathrooms, and we find out they're banning Black history.
Right.
They're erasing Black history.
Right.
And that's what we get when we are seduced by we're seduced by conservatism. They always, come in, like Hitler said he wanted to do public health policies and ended up with extermination policies. So we are very susceptible, and because of the ignorance of history and the refusal to accept reality as real, we fall into it every time.
Yep, sure do. All right, that's all I wanted to say. I enjoyed the show, and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you. Good night.
Until next time, sis.
Okay.
Good night. There was some the atmosphere. Malamu Baruti built an independent institution, but Diallo calls him a Black conservative, like it's a bad thing. I guess I started that earlier. I think I explained to why conservatism was a bad thing.
Yeah,
so
I think that's clear.
I don't think he would be offended.
How do we work inside of reactionary spaces to bring these folks back to reality? I don't want them being brainwashed by the fascists any longer. UW, yeah.
Oh yeah. Shit. I don't say you do that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think you go where you are, right? Like, I think it's unfair to do some things. I think it's silly to do some things. But when I hear foolish things in the barbershop, I'm definitely gonna push back against it, you know. Because I'm in community with those folks. I think love is telling somebody when they're wrong. And just kind of being willing to kind of be there to wrestle with it, highlight those contradictions and ask them to figure out what that is. It doesn't sound crazy to me, but I think it's just, I think really we spend a whole lot of energy trying to go into special places instead of just doing it where we are. Right? Like, you know, work with your neighbors, know them. That is the first step to doing anything. Like, I can name all of the people that live within eyesight of my house, right? Like, and now that my sons are more in the community and moving around, more little boys and kids are just coming around the house more, and I'm just modeling what we want to see out of that and being present in those communities. I think that's just a step, like just starting where we are. Like, we don't have to go to some crazy place across town when we can do it, you know, in our neighborhoods, in our barbershops, and the places where we are.
I'm glad you went first because you said the right thing. I was about to say the wrong thing. So I'm glad you went first. Save me from myself. So yeah, I second that. You need to debate Imam Baruti. What am I going to debate him on? What would be the debate topic? You know, hell, I'll debate anybody if we have an appropriate topic, and I can pro con, he can pro something, I can con something, but you'd have to come up with specifically what we're going to debate. I don't know. We got a contribution, Lucky. Thank you. No comment, no question, no criticism, just showing love and support.
Right on, Lucky. That's a real fly t-shirt you got on too. Look like the
who that is?
On the Lucky.
Okay.
Look like the yeah, that's a wild statement. Like, I definitely don't think that the Black community is liberal.
Oh, I don't think they're as liberal as I would like them to be. You know, I think conservatism is, but ultimately, I think the Black community is more liberal. I think, you know, I think the Black community is liberal. It's mostly liberal.
Yeah,
I think they are about as liberal as I think they are. How does he know? How does Smith know?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, I think we. It's something that we talked about earlier, right? Like how we find ourselves kind of in these positions where we are I won't be fair in this. We find ourselves in these positions where we are, as Diallo said earlier, like we're responding to the rhetoric, and we're dealing with the rhetoric, and we are addressing the rhetoric. I think when you start asking people very pointed questions, they're willing to step outside of that and say that's not what they think. But we don't ask them enough questions as much as we try to argue with them. And I don't think the Black community is all that liberal. So I think I may think that the Black community is more conservative because of rhetoric. Even though I don't think people really believe those things, I do think those are the things that they say.
I think the Black majority would, if you articulated conservative values, they would embrace it. But if you demonstrated conservative policies, they would reject them.
Yep.
Perfect. So you say, well, if you say to the average Black person, a man should be a man and a woman is a woman, and strong Black families, they would be like, hallelujah, yes. But if you showed them repressive policies of discriminating against people who didn't fall into the gender binary. They wouldn't support policies discriminating or repressing people who don't fall into the gender norms of binary. So if you say black people, we need to keep our community safe, and we need to stop crime, black people would say yes. But if you look and say, well, we want to take educational program or health services and theological supports from prisons, black people don't support draconian imprisonment. And so it's like that across the board. So when you come with the conservative rhetoric, they will tend to be like right on. But if you come with the policies, most black people are integrationists. The vast majority of black people seek greater opportunity and standing within the system. And they want, like Martin Luther King said, they want America to live up to the content of its creed. If you work hard, you will be rewarded. If you do wrong, you will be punished, but treated fairly and humanely.
Yep.
And if you are wronged, you can seek recourse. And whether that is if an individual wrongs you or if an industry or a corporation or the government, most black people are liberal in terms of policy implementation, conservative in terms of their idealism. But if you really had to go down to things like voting record, the policies they support, their day-to-day practices and engagement, most black people, are the vast majority, are liberal status quo, which is very, very bad. It's a very bad assessment because this system is capitalism, white hegemony, and we're under a targeted campaign of genocide. We can't afford to be liberal. Liberalism is inadequate to address our current condition, and it is inadequate to prevent the worst outcomes or to deviate from the ultimate trajectory of this system, which is ecosystem collapse and omnicide.
And what I'll just say the last little bit is I think we just don't have a radical imagination, right? And that comes from a lack of understanding of our political reality, right? Like ultimately, hey, listen, I don't care what nobody say. Capitalism on paper, if you work hard, you're gonna have more stuff. Like that just makes perfect sense, right? Like we would like to believe that's true, but that's not what happens in capitalism.
Right.
And I just don't think that I don't think we have really given enough name to the realities that we face, and we just keep allowing the right to define the terms and what the things are, and that's just what it is. And I think we as people who disagree with that, we just have to work harder at teaching our folks and working with our folks.
We have another, let me see. There was a question. Any thoughts on the Cop City indictment? And that's basically the Georgia Attorney General, a Republican Trump MAGA head, has brought RICO indictments against several Cop City protester for Christopher Carr, who's a right-wing reactionary, but he's actually, many Democrats started to praise and support him because he screen share. He refused to support Trump's claim that he won the election. So he actually had some prominent positions within the Democratic Party. He had some prominent positions within the Democratic Party, Christopher Carr. And so this motherfucker basically said that the Cop City protesters and their network of support have been engaged in domestic terrorism. They said there have been, and the acts of domestic terrorism that are specified within the indictment are throwing rocks at police cars, is domestic terrorism. and blocking roads is an act of domestic terrorism. And they also saying, the pigs and calling cops pigs and other derogatory terms were acts of terroristic threats. So there has been a RICO indictment leveled against Cop City protesters and even those who did not participate in protests. But when the cops made mass arrests against Cop City, the people who raised money to bail out the Cop City protesters, if you participated in gathering signatures to bring about a vote against Cop City, if you raise money to bail out Cop City protesters, you are also considered to be part of that criminal enterprise. So even if you never threw a rock at a police car, you never erected a barricade, you never marched or chanted, but if you stood out and said, well, I don't think these Cop City protesters should be locked up for their efforts, protests, their right to protest is embedded in the Constitution, they can say you were part of the RICO. You were giving material support to terrorism, like when people were getting locked up for donating money to the Palestinians and their efforts, donating food and clothing. Literally, people were locked up during the so-called War on Terror for sending sweaters to Afghan refugees in the freezing Afghan winter, and they were giving material aid to terrorism. So anyway, that's what the Cop City protests. And what's happening right now is many of his subordinates and many other elected prosecutors are recusing themselves and distancing themselves from this case, because this is very obviously a political prosecution. There are several. This is a retaliation because he's the Georgia Attorney General. So I don't know the name of the county, but the Atlanta County prosecutor that brought the charges against Trump, this is retaliatory prosecution. So hopefully, I can't put shit past Georgia. I know you forbid me to talk bad about the South. I'm forbidden to use stereotypes against the South or to talk down on the South. Listen, as a collective.
A couple things. One, Georgia's not in the South. Two, we still not talking about that, right? Like, yeah, this is insane. Like, I hadn't even.
Yeah, it's ugly. It's nasty. It's nasty.
Yeah, this is crazy.
It's really ugly. And if this prosecution goes forward for Georgia, it means literally any political actions you exercising your constitutional right to protest and to express for peaceful assembly, because the majority of the people in this RICO indictment have not engaged in any direct unlawfulness. But under a RICO indictment, you don't have to be directly engaged in any criminal activities. It was written so because, the mob boss, it was really written for La Cosa Nostra. The mob boss can just sit there and not even have to say, I think you should pay this person a little visit. That's all you said. I think you should pay, this guy a little visit, and the guy ends up in the river with cement shoes. And they were like, well, we're going to get you on RICO. He's like, I didn't say kill the man. I said pay him a visit. So that's how easy it is to get someone on a RICO indictment. And so now the Republicans are trying to retaliate against the lawful and legitimate use of RICO by having these. But one good thing that's coming from this is that there are prosecutors in Georgia, public officials, who are saying, I won't work this case. I'm going to recuse myself. I do not support this case. And it needs to be more forceful, but simply recusing yourself is not enough. But there are prosecutors and peoples within his office that are like, this is absurd. This is an overreach. So hopefully that momentum builds and the case gets thrown out before it never takes any. But I disagree with it. I stop Cop City, all of that. And I'm an anti-Cop City position. So
for sure. Hey, bro. But it was fun, man.
Yes, I guess we got to wrap it up. Sorry if we missed you. Thanks for everyone that chimed in. Thanks for everybody that and I don't know why I got this reputation as a troll. I understand why, but it's just inaccurate. It's inaccurate. Because I I think there's a lot of passes in the hood, a lot of passes in the community. We give a lot of passes. And I'm like, we need to revoke these passes. That's all I'm doing. I'm trying to revoke passes. There's a lot of things that a lot of individuals, a lot of organizations, and a lot of positions or beliefs that have had free reign in our community without being questioned, without being criticized, without being dissected and examined. And all I say is nothing is above scrutiny. Yeah, there are things that are above scrutiny. What you do in your personal life amongst yourself, that doesn't. But whatever you advocate or whatever public positions you take on behalf or in favor of or try to institute in the Black community, if it's beyond your personal, intimate shit, anything you put out there, I think it should be scrutinized. And people think I'm trolling when I'm just putting everything on the dissection table. Question everything, because I am a skeptic. And I think that, things, and I have high racial esteem. I think anything that's going to impact our community has to be of the highest quality. So, no more on that. But again, I'm glad you're back.
Man, I'm going to tell you something, man. I really needed this after my day. So, yeah, right on.
Yeah, bro. And if you want to call me outside, you got my number.
No, come on.
Yeah. You got my number. Huh?
No, I just said, man, yeah.
I mean, call me for anything. If you just want to talk, you need me to ghostwrite some more of your raps, whatever, whatever you need, I got you.
Okay. You got me some bars? Okay.
You know it.
Okay. I will say that your what you call them, globe holders and population controllers, that was a little bit of a bar.
That was wise intelligence.
Oh, see.
Globe holders, population controller, disease makers, aka AIDS creators, the cremators, the doctors, nurses, and niggas haters that's out to get us after making us bullshitters, the sister hitters who knock them and don't stay with them, the human litter that Whitey's trying to get rid of. That's from the New World Order album. But damn, God damn it, I'm the worst sucker MC. I should have took credit for that. But yeah, that was wise and tough. I haven't seen you that song.
Yeah, I try to listen to it.
Yeah, that New World Order. I think that was the last Poor Righteous Teacher album. After that, it was just Wise Intelligence. Yeah, the rest of the
Paul, I'm working on it. Like, I think I'm at a good spot. I let Diallo and family here. I don't know. They never told me what they thought about it, so I guess it wasn't good.
I told you I've been bootlegging that all over Chicago. Pull up, you see an old rusty 2015 Ford Escape on King Drive on 47th Street. Pull up. I got bootleg Skipp Coon out.
Yeah, so
what you mean? I ain't been able to tell you nothing. You've been out here jet setting and persona non gratas.
Hey man.
So you won't put it out, I have to put bootleg it. And then I'll be sitting in the courtroom and you and Irritated Genie be on the side over there with the prosecutor pointing fingers.
Hey,
right there, Your Honor.
Hey,
right there.
You see the perpetrator? Yeah, right here.
And I ain't even got no goons to send after you. I gotta be cool. But I got people though. I wouldn't send them after you.
I mean, I appreciate that, bro.
What happens in the streets, stay in the streets. Tree line streets, like we on the tree line streets, like.
Hey man, we not making we not making no statements. Yeah, no statements.
Anyway. Thank you very much. I'm glad you finally graced us with your appearance. You ain't forget where you come from, and you ain't got too big to commune with the people, to be accessible. I'm almost out of water too, so.
All right on, man. Right on.
All right, so I'm off to finish celebrating. I hope my wife. We got my son a gift. I hope she ain't gave it to him yet.
Oh man, that's a blessing. All right, we'll get to it.
Yeah. So anyway. Good night. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll be in the next. Let me just pull up the calendar. So I say the next Rational Radical broadcast. This computer don't do nothing I tell it to do.
On the
will 20th, be on September 20th. September 20th. Mark the date, and we'll be back live and direct.
Let's check in on that. I think I might have a thing, but we'll figure it out. Man, I love
you
man.
do have a thing. You have the Rational Radicals broadcast. You don't play Hollywood with me. You do that with your other little rap friends. You do that with your industry people. I ain't no industry cat. I'm a real street cat. I'm a real cat. Don't go Hollywood on me, Skipp.
All right.
Wednesday the 20th. I got a dude here, big fan of yours, man. He think I got pulled with you. He's like, yo, you know, Skipp, oh my God.
Oh,
like, he work out to your music, getting big, getting swole. So I'm like, I don't have no pull with this dude, but you got a fan base here. You need to come do a show. Let me be the janky promoter. You ever see that movie, Janky Promoter? It'd be so bad. But yeah, no.
Try not to. All right, bro.
I have you. Anyway, all right. Good night, y'all. For real this time. All right. Till next time. Peace.